So let's start with this. Her name is Brigitte, but someone is going to tell me that I'm pronouncing it wrong, so I'm just going to be calling her Brig for the rest of this video, alright? Anyway, Brig. I am all too familiar with this character because being a flex DPS means that whenever you play a certain meta comp, you're the one who's on the funky character for a whole year. Brig used to dominate the meta. I mean, actually, she was everywhere for a full year. She was the centerpiece. But ever since that one meta she had, she's been on the quiet end. Brig is Overwatch's Tyrant turned Protector, so let's talk about it. And before we start, brief self-promotion. 1, I'm going to be live on Twitch after this goes live, so if you want to come by, you know where to go. 2, come join the Discord server. I made one, it's pretty fun. Some of you are weird, but sure, look, it's funny. 3, I have a Twitter, so if you want to come follow me there, well look, you know where to go. As per usual, we're going to be talking balance history first, then we'll get into our design, so if you want to skip ahead, follow the timestamps. So, March 20th, 2018, Brigitte was released and she had a fair few differences than how we know her today. Her passive, Inspire, was pretty much the same, outputting healing in an area around Brig after she hit an enemy. Her primary fire has always been the same, but her shield, oh good god. 600 HP and only a 3-second recharge time if you destroyed it. And speaking of her shield, well, Shield Bash used to be one of the abilities of all time. First, it dealt 50 damage, stunned someone for a second, and had a 90-degree angle cone, along with being able to pass through barriers. Whip Shot was the same as today, but it used to be even faster at 80 meters per second travel speed. Repair Pack used to only be a single charge, but it would instantly heal 150 HP and would give you up to 75 bonus armor if you were at full. And Rally, not only did it cost less to build, but it also gave up to 150 armor to Brig and her allies, along with the armor in question being permanent. And oh yeah, she also had 250 HP, 200 of which being HP and 50 of which being armor. Her first actual change on the 3rd of May 2018, where the shield cone angle got decreased. Later that month, her rally armor got decreased along with the shield bash cooldown getting increased. In September that year, bash was finally changed so that Brig would get knocked down when bashing into a Rhine charge, a Doom punch, or another Brig bash, instead of just being stunned and being fine herself. Shield got its HP reduced by 100, and a little later, bash was changed to not go through shields, along with getting a damage nerf down to 5. Also, I want to point out a change that Rally got, which is worded terribly. Rally now has a maximum duration of 30 seconds. I know this is referring to the armor only lasting 30 seconds, but it sounds like Brig is just rallying for 30 seconds now. Blizzard gave Brig a rework since they knew there was only going to be 2 healers in the game now. Inspired healing got increased, but her self-healing from it was halved. Repair Pack was given 3 charges, but the heal got lowered and it got swapped from being an instant heal to being over 2 seconds instead. Her shield health got reduced to 200, the bash stun duration got decreased and the rally cost got increased. Later Repair Pack was changed to only give 50 armor, which then just got flat out removed in the next patch. Her shield got a health increase, though after being destroyed the cooldown was now 5 seconds instead of 3. The last of the changes she got were to her base health, getting lowered to 150 and Inspire, getting its healing decreased down to 90, but the self-healing was no longer halved on Brig. Come the Overwatch 2 beta, she got a couple adjustments to help her out in the shift. First, Inspire was now triggered by Shield Bash, but since the devs wanted to cut down on hard CC in Overwatch 2, Bash no longer stuns. Instead, its cooldown was now reduced. It dashed further and movement wasn't cancelled after hitting a shield, and since the damage got buffed back to 50. Rally also now gave overhealth to allies instead of armor. Bash ended up getting just a straight up buff to its knockback later on in the beta, and a lot of her changes from there on are just numbers. Until April 11th, 2023. For Rally, Brig got an instant increase to her armor, but she no longer received the bonus overhealth it generates. Rally also now upgraded her shield to a 4K Ultra HD widescreen TV, giving it a health increase, and she could also now stun people with Shield Bash during the rally, which would also affect multiple people instead of just one thanks to the new size. However, in exchange for all of this, her Repair Pack range got reduced down to 25 meters. She got more and more number changes until we get to her most recent one, with Rally resetting the cooldown on Shield Bash upon activation. And with her history done, look, lads, I just need a moment to talk about release Brig, okay? So some backstory on Brig's release, the creation of Brig, whatever you want to say. There was one primary design philosophy as they made this character. Create a counter to dive. Not create a character who can protect her team, not create a character who's good at peeling, none of that. It was create a character who will counter dive. That, my friends, is the worst possible way that you could ever create a character. Your character design and balance teams need to be separate. They certainly need to work together, but they need to be separate. Because if you ever create a character whose goal is to do the job of the balance team, all you do is create more issues for your balance team. But look, you know what? Let's take a look at Overwatch 1 Brig herself. Looking at her story, she's supposed to be a combat medic. She was inspired by Reinhardt and all the stories about heroes, but she didn't want to wait until after the battlefield to fix up their armor and patch up their wounds. So what does she do? She takes to the battlefield with the motto, "I will be their shield." If we take a look at release Brig, technically this way that her story folds out does reflect her gameplay, but it really does not. Her damage numbers on release were high, and because of where she was positioned, which was usually on the front line beside her tanks, well look, I'll just put it this way. Some of you may be familiar with the class called Paladin. It's usually in stuff like MMOs or D&D for whichever. In case you don't know, Paladins are like a tank support hybrid. Brig is meant to be like Overwatch's Paladin, but on release, she was just so good at brawling people and taking on the entire cast nearly, that it was basically just a tank who healed a little bit. So as you all know, Brig gave us a whole new meta for a full year. But before I get into GOATs, let's talk about the Overwatch landscape before GOATs. So, pre-GOATs, the strongest Overwatch comp was Dive. Monkey, D.Va, Tracer, Genji, whatever supports you felt like in the day really, it would consist of these types of characters, who all only had one goal in mind. Find your support and dive them. Heavily simplified, but you get what I mean. It's the same as the current day dive comp, except the only difference is the kill feed looks weird. So where does Brig come into this? Well, first let's look at our matchups into the primary dive characters. Starting with Winston, okay, as we all know, Winston tickles characters with armor back in Overwatch 1. His damage is cut down so heavily. If we look at D.Va, well, Defense Matrix is not doing anything versus a Brig. Genji and Tracer get shield bashed, idiots. Especially for Tracer, she famously got one-shot by Brig just using a melee bash whip combo. But let's talk about GOATs. The brief version of the history is very simple. A team called GOATs was against some other team, and they knew that their DPS were not going to beat the enemy DPS in a sniper mirror. So what did they do? Let's just stack a bunch of tanks and supports and run at them. And GOATs was born. Now lads, there are so many variations of GOATs, and even GOATs itself was such a deep composition, I do not have the time to be going over every single version of it. But no matter which variation of GOATs we're talking about, there's one consistency at all times. Brig is there. Brig was the lifeblood of GOATs. She was the reason the comp existed, and she even got a GOATs skin. The reason she worked so well in GOATs was for two reasons, but one of the primary ones was armor. So in case you don't know, armor back in Overwatch 1 used to work a little bit differently than today. First, the way that the health bar worked was health, armor, shields, and then the weird overhealth decaying shields that we had back then. So what does all this mean, some of you may ask? 425 HP Zenyatta. 425 HP Zenyatta. Which, keep in mind, you had to break through 150 health worth of shields before you could actually touch that armor. You think that sounds bad on Zen? Imagine Zarya's old 400 HP turning into 625. Rally and repair packs were so strong, they literally altered game mechanics entirely. We had armor move up to be the top thing in health bars, and it even affected her own dad's rework, but that's for his own video. Brig was already extremely strong in duels. She could take on the majority of the cast, she was able to go ahead and heal herself up, stun you, knock you away, and of course she'd occasionally have rally armor when she was fighting you. There was nothing you could do to easily take on a Brig. But her AoE healing and armor gave rise to a meta so strong that Blizzard had to alter several game mechanics if they wanted to actually balance it. Sure, certain comps did rise up, stuff like quad DPS to try and take on GOATs, and they certainly did well, but realistically the best counter to GOATs, 9 times out of 10, was more GOATs. So Rollock, with this on the horizon, Blizzard knew Brig was going to have to change to survive in a 2-2-2 landscape. And overall, I think her rework hit it out of the park. Her story has always been how she wants to protect her allies, to be their shield, not how she wants to cause the extinction of monkeys and beat up British women. So Brig's rework basically gave her a full playstyle shift. She went from a primarily brawly support to a nearly full-on peel support. If we're talking coordinated team play, it was most common to see her in dive comps, paired with an Ana or a Zen, acting as a bodyguard. I mean, I even have a clip of it from my skins, though the protector part went out the window.
They have Hanzo, you shouldn't say out there.
I'm alright, I believe.
Do I have permission to send the bomb if I see it?
Absolutely.
I believe in your bomb.
Can we rally trans?
We already did this
You're
today.
gonna die all out.
Oh no!
Slamming main.
Shit! Shit! I'm
You're actually the biggest group of injures I've ever met.
Emoting Brig during fights aside, this rework was perfection in terms of getting Brig to act on her design goal, which, while yes it was counter dive, the balanced version of it is protect allies. She does this beautifully in this version. Bash still has its stun, but it's shorter, along with the fact that the damage is heavily reduced. Sure, the packs were a little bit stupid for a while, but once they got rid of the armor, they went to a very reasonable form of healing. Good range, a decent heal over the duration, but most importantly, it just wasn't the previous instant 150 heal that also had up to 75 armor attached. Like, how that much healing being instant with no investment is something that I like to call a little bit silly. Flail has always been a really interesting ability. Using it to deny dive attempts will always be fun, and since you do need to aim it at least a little bit to hit, but even then the use cases are plentiful. One of my favourite ways to use it is saving a teammate from a hog hook by booping them to displace them. So this rework is where her transition began. She swapped from being a Tyrant and started to finally become a Protector. And this stayed consistent in her design, from the time she got the rework all the way until Overwatch 2. Sometimes it would be swapped around. You'd see Brig outside of dive comps. She was occasionally played in poke comps if you didn't run a Mercy and wanted someone to protect Zen, but that was uncommon since Mercy was a staple on poke. Either way, her rework is by far the best one that Blizzard has ever made, completely shifting the community perception on all cylinders, whether playing as, with, or against a Brig. And come Overwatch 2, this is more true than ever. Especially with Bash missing its stun, so it's actually a lot less frustrating to deal with whenever there is a Brig on the enemy team. But she still has her strength as a peeler, for her other support, even her DPS, occasionally her tank sometimes. Thanks to the new Shield Bash feeling even better to use thanks to the extra dash range that it has, it also lets you play like an anchor between two teammates. So you can dash to your Ana or you could dash to your Ashe depending on who's getting jumped at whichever time. And it also kept pretty much 99% of her movement techs intact, which I'm always happy to hear because removing movement tech just is not fun. Now granted, she used to have that old whip dash tech and that was broken, but it was also hilarious when you look back on it. Now as for Brig when Overwatch 2 released, well, she had a bit of a shift from this peeler dynamic that I've been on about for the last while. With the release of Junker Queen, we had a new comp rise up, Jotes. Just a Junker Queen based brawl. You'd have Brig, Lucio, Queen, who cares what DPS were in play. And the reason it was so strong was thanks to Junker Queen's shout not actually having decaying health when it was used. You would just get move speed and an immediate, permanent 100 health for the duration. So imagine combining that with Brig Rally over health and Lucio speed, and you can see how we have an issue. And those two comps, Goats and Jotes, are pretty much the only times Brig has been a mainstay in a brawl-based composition. Since then, she's just been a form of peel, usually for her support in a dive comp. Though occasionally in some poke comps, she might be the reason that you have someone to protect your Zen in case you don't want to run a Mercy, but in most cases, what you actually have a Brig in a poke comp for is to help your Sigma so that he doesn't get run down by the enemy team's dive. She's got variety in who she protects and when she protects them, but the fact that she can actually look out for her whole team and be everyone's shield is amazing. And as for the rally buff that she got in 2023, well, one, I just find it hilarious how Blizzard loves to just widen support ults. But two, I even thought at the time, and even today, that it's still a perfectly reasonable change. You don't always want to have Brig as just a bodyguard for one of your supports. That's going to get boring eventually. She's a fully melee character. Giving her the tools to actually try and take people on and help her team whenever a brawl situation rises is perfectly fine. But for the last while, Brig has been in a weird spot. She's not weak per se, she just isn't as strong, and it's because the meta favours Lucio at the moment. With the similarities of both their kits, whenever there's a meta where one of them is stronger than the other always ends up being nothing more than a niche pick. But the thing is, Lucio has always been that stronger pick since the inception of Overwatch 2. With the recent change to Bash getting reset when she uses Rally, I don't think the change is massively broken or anything, it's definitely just the strongest possible change she could have gotten. Because she's already a strong pick, it's simply just that Lucio is better for the meta. I remember I saw some suggestions from Mace to the Face on Twitter that aren't as strong of a change, but are definitely helpful in increasing her strength. My personal favourite being Repair Pack getting a buff back to 30 meter range. But I will say that the Bash change does feel really nice, especially when you're playing against Doomfist. Stunning him with a charge cancel into a stun Bash is amazing, I love it, bullying Doom is my favourite pastime. I also want to point out how the tank passive, while it doesn't mess with Brig as badly as it messes with Lucio, it still hurts her a fair bit. Trying to run away from a tank, even booping them back and dashing away doesn't cover enough ground, and you just get run over no matter what. Though at the very least it can be used to displace and disrupt tanks. I've had a fair few enemy hogs flaming me during my games for messing up their hooks. In Overwatch 2, I find Brig a lot more engaging to play. Sure, you don't have your old Bash Shatter combos anymore, but since you need to keep tabs on all teammates now, or at least a specific 2 or 3, when combined with her newfound mobility from Shield Bash, it's nothing but fun to me. As much as I love what Overwatch 2 has done for Brig, she's not exactly thriving. Part of the reason is just because of Kiriko being in so many games, and obviously Kiriko does not need peel. But there's also the fact that playing her is weird as hell sometimes. To start with, her shield is not frame 1. There will be some times where your shield visually is in front of you, but the shield isn't actually up yet. It's not like Reinhardt's shield. There's so many times I got shattered where I could have sworn that I should have blocked it. Now, some of this can be attributed to her ping, but the frame 1 shield thing, well look, you gotta feel bad for the Brig players there. There's also so many bugs with shield to do with stuff like pulse bomb, and you can drop the shield and then the pulse bomb still sticks to you. They've largely been fixed, but still. She's a pretty buggy character when you get down to it, though not as buggy as certain other ones. There's also the fact that I don't think even Blizzard likes her anymore. I mean, we went 10 seasons without her getting a Battle Pass skin, and she finally gets one this season, and it's just an epic skin? Like, the poor girl's getting scammed. Over her time in Overwatch, Brig has had some of the most dramatic changes out of the entire cast. She went from a Tyrant, being called the Overwatch Killer, and being nearly universally hated by the entire player base, actually acting on her role as Protector, and also people love when a Brig is on their team. When she's played correctly, at least. And as for playing against her, well look, we've always experienced a worse version of Brig to play against, lads, now haven't we? Brig is by far Overwatch's best rework, and I hope Blizzard will always look at the work they did on her and take that into account whenever they rework more characters in the future. But you know what? I want to hear it from you. What do you think about Brig? Past, present, even future if we want to go into that route. And as a reminder, I'm live on Twitch as this video goes live, so if you want to come, stop by, say hi, I'm grabbing some footage for a future video, you know where to go. But now, if you're still here, sure look, drop a like, drop a sub, all that YouTube stuff, and I'll talk to you next time, lads.